and so we could kind of talk about, and I would have an idea. A lot of the other recruits, they were just, this is all new to them, so they kind of, we talk about the war, they wouldn't really understand much about it. So I would say if there was talk, it was very briefly amongst everybody.
Yeah,
So.
but in terms of, moving forward with the war in Iraq, their opinions of it, you guys didn't share general opinions of should we or shouldn't we, or, a general conversation?
Not really. I think every recruiter, the recruiters I have, we only had three, artillery cav guy, and I forget the other MOS, but I know they talked about their experience, but as far as politics go, they couldn't even give us advice or what they think, because they're so far in the chain that a response from them would be too broad to really get an idea of what's going on and what's going to be forward. No one really had an answer at the time, so we didn't really talk about it that much.
What military job did you choose?
I picked 11 X-ray, which was airborne infantry. It actually was 11 Bravo and 11 Charlie. They combined the MOSs, which 11 Bravo is your standard infantryman, 11 C, 11 Charlie is a mortarman, but they actually combined it, so when you got to basic training, they pretty much picked your platoon and said, hey, you're going to be a mortarman, you're going to be an infantryman. So I want to do airborne school, and I want to do the Ranger indoctrination program. At the time, I wanted to go to Ranger school, but there was no slots, so I just was wanted to do that as I progressed, but never turned out that way, so I stuck with airborne infantry.
So your intention going in was that you wanted to be 11 X-ray, Ranger school, etc., without a slot, and you're just going to move forward and hope that a slot opens.
Sure.
Okay. And when did you leave for basic training?
Well, I graduated high school in June, and I left
June of?
'05. And I was on a plane first week in July, heading down to Fort Benning, Georgia. So.
What was the off the plane?
Well, we landed in Atlanta, Fort Benning, Georgia, and we waited a couple days. It was very crowded. In the summer times, it was a mess down there because Fort Benning is very big, and there's a lot of MOSs coming there. Fort Benning holds a lot of schooling, so all those people were there. So we were pretty low on the food chain, so we had to wait a while. So we got in the reception. We called it 30th AG, and we literally almost waited a good month to even head down range. So we got there. We were all a little nervous, but I knew that it was going to be a psychological challenge, and I knew how the game was going to be played a little bit. You don't really know what to expect. You just more just research and hearing it from word of mouth. When you get down there, you kind of will get that feeling, and at first it's a shocker for anybody. You're thrown into a different environment with people you have no idea who they are, where they've come from, but you're all on the same page for the most part. And it was a little difficult at first.
What were you most scared or most nervous about?
I think once we got to reception, it was nerve-wracking. We didn't really experience the real nerves until we got sent downrange, they call it, which is your training battalion. But as we waited a month there, where we had to wait for everybody to get through, we were pretty excited to get downrange because we couldn't sitting around and pretty much sleeping for a good 3 or 4 weeks just waiting. Hurry up and wait, as they call it. We were kind of excited to get down there because we just wanted to get going with our training. We wanted to move on, and once we finally got downrange, and you saw the drill sergeants for the first time, and it was a shocker for everybody. I didn't think it was as difficult as I expected. It was a little easier for me because like I said, I had a little background knowledge that made life easier. But no one can really prepare you for, somebody in your face, 3 or 4 people screaming and spitting in you. You really can't train and prepare yourself for that because it's all new and a shocker. So it was definitely an experience for anybody, and you caught on real quick though. You realized how it worked, and you just knew you had to take it each day at a time and just get through it and keep moving on. So.
Did you have a lot of guys that didn't complete training, failed out, or chaptered out, or? We
had a few guys. We actually had a bunch of people go AWOL, probably 15 or more. They were leaving 3 or 4 at a time. Some people, it's a whole different environment down there. It's a different lifestyle, and some people can't mentally, handle the stresses that they got there and, they'll say, wow, this is not what I expected, or what did I get myself into? So there was people that, there were people that had physical problems, couldn't do a lot of the physical challenges, things like that, that had to get held over another cycle, I guess you could say, and then people that were a failure to adapt. And I think any battalion had them, it's across the board. There was that percentage that they struggled.
Yeah. During your basic training, was there any theater-specific training or training specific to the war in Iraq or Afghanistan or the global war on terrorism?
I wouldn't say not much at basic in AIT. It's why they call it basic training. We just learn the baseline of stuff. They did add, react to IEDs, react to, this type of ambush. Improvised explosive devices, the #1 killer over there. So they threw in a little bit more than earlier cycles, but it wasn't too in-depth. It was still learning your basic weaponry, battle drills, things like that. So a lot of that stuff didn't come till later on at my unit and so forth.
If you could boil down basic and AIT and throw away everything else, the one thing that was most important, or you thought the guys took away that was most important moving forward, what do you think that it would be?
Well, I think that more or less came in AIT. I mean, basic, you did your basic battle drills and your weaponry, and it's great. Everybody should know that. When we hit AIT, luckily, our drill sergeants had a lot of combat experience, and they would sit down, and besides all the basic stuff and being a hard drill sergeant, they actually sat down a couple times and said, hey, where you're going to go, this is the stuff you need to know. Take this in mind. And I know a lot of drill sergeants don't do that. Yeah, actually, our drill sergeant actually came in and showed us videos of his experience, more or less what to expect, that, it's not sugar-coated, that there is a lot of challenges over there. There's going to be a lot of IEDs. You're going to experience IEDs. And they pretty much told us how it is, that, some of you may end up being casualties, and that's the reality of it. So having them personally tell you, that it's not just part of the basic game, as we call it, that kind of set in a little bit, that, what we were getting ourselves into, and having that extra knowledge definitely helped out a lot. And doing some of the battle drills in AIT, like reacting to this type of IED, stuff like that we could use, and we definitely did use. So I think the stuff more geared to what to expect really set in than more or less the basic first aid and what have you.
Yeah. So, I mean, describing the challenges from the drill sergeants, I mean, does that increase your desire to train? I mean, cohesiveness, or is that, accurate to say?
Well, it's always a challenge what they had us doing, both physically and mentally. You didn't have your many phone calls. You were living a lifestyle, and the next week it was bam, something new, and the drill sergeants weren't easy on you. And I knew personally that they had a job to do, and that was to train us. They're going to be hard, because if they aren't hard, what are we going to do when we get into the real life situation? How are we going to react? So it was good to have them be hard on us and to be aggressive, because it definitely changes your mindset of how we're going to react in the real world. So I wouldn't say it steered me away to train. I took it as, this is, as much as you don't enjoy someone screaming at you and waking you up all the time, if you didn't have that training, you would fall apart in a combat life situation. So I never looked at it as, this is, I don't like this, this is a pain, this is something that's going to help us out in the long run, as you say. So
when did you receive your assignment following AIT? When did you find out where you were going?
Well, it actually changed on me. Right after AIT, there was a long hold for airborne school, which was right on Fort Benning, and we actually, my battalion left that day. We got lucky and got sent right into airborne school, which was 3 weeks. And it was definitely a challenge at airborne school, and they all told us, you're going to the 82nd. Everybody that went through airborne school usually got sent to the 82nd. We knew that there was a unit in Italy, Vicenza, Italy, and we knew there was a unit in Alaska. But I personally did not know much about either of them. I had to focus, I'm going to the Carolinas, and it's not too bad, I can handle that. And literally the last week or so, they picked